Ruthless dictators. Let's talk about them. I mean, there's no shortage of them throughout history. You've got people like Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, and even, he who shall not be named, Voldemort. But way before all of those, and way before even the dates still said BC, I mean, not to them, but to us they would still, they say BC, there was a gentleman who was also classed as probably one of the most ruthless dictators ever. He was the first to unify China and ended the Warring States period. He also built a ginormous burial tomb which went undiscovered for 2,000 years. I guess you could say he was China, keep it a secret. Get it? Because he unified China. Yeah. Thank you. I know you're all laughing on the other side. He was born with the name Zheng Zhao, and he was the son of the king of Qin. Or was he? Legend has it that Zheng's mother was already pregnant when she was introduced to the then Prince of Qin by Zheng's supposed true father, Liu Bei. It's an odd fetish really, but I suppose things were a lot weirder way back when. I mean, we all know that BC stands for bonkers and crazy. Zheng ascended to the throne of Qin in 246 BC when he was just 13 years old, and because of this, it was Liu Bei who was tasked with being the acting ruler until Zheng came of age. However, during this period, Zheng had gained a few people that wanted him gone. One of these being Liu Bei himself, who in 238 BC launched a coup alongside Zheng's mother and her newly found lover Lao Ai. And Lao was apparently known for having a rather large appendage. I suppose if there's any reason for you to want to betray your own son. However, unfortunately for them, Zheng caught them out, and so whilst Lao tried his best to raise an army, they were dealt with pretty swiftly. Now what happens next is kind of disturbing, so if you are a massive wuss, I suggest that you grow up. His mother was sentenced to eternal house arrest. Liu Bei was exiled for eternity. However, his eternity didn't last too long, as he committed suicide within the year. And then there was Lao. Now Lao was used to set an example. His arms, legs and neck were tied to 5 different horses, and these horses were pointing in opposite directions. And although Lao tried his best to impersonate Stretch Armstrong, instead he popped like a weasel. Pop goes the weasel! As a ruler, Zheng adopted a legalistic philosophy, as he believed that people were driven by greed and self-interest, and so introduced laws and punishments alongside them. However, when you are a ruthless dictator, you take things as far as you can, to the most extreme point possible. Lao was literally just the tip of the iceberg. For example, 25 odd years later, a meteor landed in Zheng's land, and someone had inscribed some unsavoury words about the ruthless dictator. Unfortunately though, the culprit never owned up, and so instead of taking a rational approach, Zheng instead decided to just execute every single individual in the area. I mean, at least that way he knows he got the culprit, I suppose, as well as thousands of other innocent people, but he got the culprit, and everyone knows that's what matters. I'll tell you one thing, Zheng was so intense that he may as well have just been camping. Intense. Camping. Intense. Zheng's trust issues, though, whilst being damaging to a hell of a lot of people, did also cause some pretty major change. The abolishment of the feudal system, which was used for generations, and instead appointed officials based on merit, skill, and just how much he trusted them personally. The bureaucratic structure which he introduced actually lasted way up until the 20th century. So, I mean, he must have been doing something, right? Zheng ruled during the Warring States period. By 227 BC, Qin had swallowed up 3 of its neighbouring states. Next up on Zheng's menu was the state of Yan, and they also knew that they were next, and that they were unable to defeat Qin in battle, and so instead delivered gifts to Qin as a way of submitting. These included a map of the conquest of Qin, as well as a renegade general's head. However, there was also a secret third gift in the form of a knife or blade of sorts, and these messengers quickly turned into assassins. Unfortunately for them though, Zheng was quickly able to fend them off himself. I don't think there's going to be an Assassin's Creed game named after these guys anytime soon. Eventually, Qin became the almighty power, and Zheng himself had unified China for the first time in 221 BC. And as a reward for such an immense achievement such as unifying an entire country and putting an end to the Warring States period, Zheng gave himself a brand new name. He was now known as Qin Shi Huang, a name inspired by Chinese mythology and loosely translates to the first sovereign leader. Well, apart from the Qin bit, that was just to remind him of where he was from. I mean, he's a busy guy, he's got lots of responsibilities. How is he going to remember where he's from if it's not in his name? Qin Shi Huang's power level was almost at full capacity, unlike West Ham Stadium when they played Arsenal a few weeks ago. Am I right? one for the football fans there. And so, what do you do with such immense level of power? Qin Shi Huang decided to murder over 1,000 Confucian scholars just for believing in a different philosophy. He burnt some alive, he stoned some to death. I mean, you've got to have a bit of variety. You can't just murder everyone the same way. That's boring. Whilst that doesn't sound too good, I mean, it doesn't sound great. In fact, it just sounds absolutely horrendous. It wasn't only bad things that he did. He was actually responsible for starting the construction of the Great Wall of China, as he was trying to defend against barbarians from the north.
We're building a beautiful wall, a big one that really works.
But in my opinion, this is one of the worst things he could have done, because who in their right mind starts a construction project which takes 18 months to get from one end to the other? But as we all know, and we've probably all heard many times before, with great power comes great paranoia. And so after many assassination attempts and several betrayals, which I've already talked about, Qin Shi Huang began fearing for his life. And so he started searching for the source of immortality. He summoned magicians and alchemists to his court. I say summoned, he most likely threatened them in order to force them to come to his court. But he wanted them to produce elixirs which would be the source of immortality. The elixirs that were created for Qin Shi Huang, though, actually contained quicksilver. And no, it's not the X-Men character or the guy from Avengers Age of Ultron. This was a source of mercury. And whilst he wanted to break free, unfortunately for Qin Shi Huang, this was not a dose of Freddie Mercury. I want to break free! And as you can probably assume, these elixirs were unsuccessful, and ironically enough, they were the most likely cause of his death. As a result, Qin Shi Huang began to settle for the next best thing, and so because he couldn't rule forever from this world, he began preparations in order to rule from the spirit world. Construction of a ginormous burial tomb began, and because of his legalistic philosophy, there was no shortage of slaves and criminals that he could use in order to build it. And if they were lucky enough to make it to the end, the criminals and slaves were rewarded in the form of being murdered, along with thousands of officials and craftsmen, in order just to keep the tomb a secret.
Now you say another word and I swear to God I will dice you into 1,000,000 little pieces.
And in fairness, it did work. The tomb was kept secret for over 2,000 years. It was eventually discovered in 1974 by just sheer coincidence, as farmers were digging for a well and came across 3 chambers of the tomb. Hello, is that J.K. Rowling? Oh, I've just found some new chambers of secrets for you. Beyond the 3 chambers in the tomb was something I think would be unimaginable to many people. And to be honest, pretty unnerving, as from the pictures, it really does give me a Weeping Angels kind of vibe. there was thousands of terracotta soldiers lined up side by side. And what was most spectacular about this was not just the amount of terracotta soldiers, but also each individual soldier had unique facial features. Every single soldier was crafted uniquely. I couldn't imagine the amount of time and effort it would have taken to create each individual face. And not only that, I couldn't imagine how annoyed you'd be after hearing they would just be hidden away for 2,000 years. Beyond the Terracotta Army, there was also bronze weapons, horses, and even real chariots that were in the tomb. Qin Shi Huang really did create an entire army to protect him as he went into the spirit world. And there's even more treasures to be discovered, as there are some chambers in the tomb that have yet to be opened due to concern of damaging the artifacts inside. But I have seen Tomb Raider, I have seen National Treasure, I have seen Indiana Jones. I don't know if the treasures are still the other side of that chamber, or if someone has already made it in secretly and taken out all the secret treasures that were meant to be found. But anyway, until the archaeologists finally make it into that chamber, we won't know. We won't know what's inside, and we won't know if it's all there.
What's in the fucking box?
Until then, I guess there's only one more thing to say. Bye.